Okay, so sorry. So basically, we're just gonna go through and answer stuff on here. I'm recording this. If you have questions, ask them. We're just gonna go through the kind of what quiz is on according to what he's got. We'll go through like the practice quiz, and then we're gonna pretty much ask any questions if you have them. So starting off, we can go through Zybooks, anything like that. So basically, from what I understand, starting off, he says the quiz coverage is cumulative, but I'm pretty sure that like it's gonna mainly be focusing on writing code, is what he said in class. So basically, know how to write code, including all the stuff that was kind of in that first part. Okay, so starting off, execute a C statement. So given a C statement, tell what actions are performed as a result of executing that statement. So just kind of understanding how to read code. This is something you probably should not be here for. If you're just trying to figure out how to read code, you should probably practice or see some examples. As like there's nothing you're going to be able to study here that's going to be able to teach you. I mean, you should be able to at least, I don't know, we can answer some questions here, but you're not going to be able to like, this is more of a skill you have to learn.
Jay, sorry for the interruption. Are you streaming? We don't see it in Discord.
I'm streaming. Well, that's great. Thanks, I appreciate that. Glad someone said something. Make sure you guys can hear me now. You guys see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, glad someone said something. Thank you very much, whoever that was. Alright, so basically know how to execute a statement. That's kind of be able to work through the code, figure out what's going on. So writing a C program using loops or conditionals that performs a given task expressed in English pseudocode or flowchart. We can go through loops and conditionals later on. I'll open up C line and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more. Declare and initialize an array. Now the things that I just want to kind of go through here is you initialize an array. Unlike some languages, you have well, we can probably go through this in C line as well, but you have an int. Actually, I'll put this in the general chat so you guys can see this as well. But it's basically it's int, for example, and then like the name, and then you can initialize it a couple different ways. You have one in which you can like initialize. I believe that's one way to do it, where you kind of initialize with a set of values, or another one where you initialize the array with like a set size, so like a size of 5, and you don't have to fill it with anything. So those are the two options, I believe, to initialize an int. Those are in the ECE209 chat.
You can also give it a value and values, like a length and values. You don't have to fill all the values. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I guess what would that look like if you want to throw that in there?
Here.
Which we can kind of go through when we get to the coding part, because it'll probably require a lot more C line than it will other things.
Oh, that was here. Let me edit that. I did minus, but that should be an equal sign.
Yeah, that's another way you can do it. Basically, just initializing it with setting a size and then also putting values in it. So that's also something.
So do we only have character arrays, or do we also have like numerical arrays?
You can have any type of array that has a value, like, or any type of what do you call it? Any type can have an array, which a type is like an int, character, float, double, anything like that can have an array of it. Actually, we'll learn something later on called objects, which are user-defined types.
Yeah.
You can create arrays of as well. So basically, arrays, for what you're worried about, at least in this test, is just going to be like the 5 types that we were familiar with. They just pretty much all have the same format, except that they have, the only difference is, of course, the int at the beginning would be a double or anything like that. Okay.
So are we gonna have to deal with like array indexing and all that?
I don't. What do you mean by array indexing?
like for some problem, would we have to like use like a for loop or something to run through all the indexes?
I would assume that is something that would definitely be within, but I think from what I've seen him, like kind of like what I've gotten the feel for, is I would expect to have stuff where he tells you the size of the array and you iterate through it. I don't know if there's a size of function on here, but I don't think that's something he's told us yet or told us about. We kind of mentioned it, but I don't think we've kind of gone over it. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think there is, you'll be given a size and you'll be able to iterate through that, but you won't be having to just have an array and have to figure out what the size is.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. And then, so basically declare initialize an array. That's kind of what we just talked about there. Described, the behavior of C code that includes an array access expressions. So basically what that sounds like is accessing different parts of the array, which I think we might want to start switching over to C-line shortly. But that we can go over and it's better to show you in code. So let me see if I can pull up my C-line and create a new workspace, and I will switch over the screen capture as well. C-line wants to load. There we go. But I think I'll switch over to C-line and just start typing out the stuff rather than just talking about it. That'll be best. Okay, file, new project, C library, C20. Now let's just call this review 1. Yeah. Start this. But yeah, so just being able to initialize things in different parts of the array. Where the heck did I save this? Okay, you know what? This is just going to be my lab, but I don't really need it anymore. It's all good. Okay, so let me switch screens real quick on OBS. And I will see one, there we go. And Discord switch screens. Okay. So you have basically you have to start off, you have one, actually I don't believe I have a static main real quick. I'm just gonna undo this real quick. So you have your main function, which I'll just put here, and then the rest, this is just from the lab. So if you're not, just kind of do this real quick, and there we go. So that's your basic program, what you're gonna be looking at. So to go over again what kind of we talked about here, number, I think exit return 0 is what I need here. Be wrong. What does this have an issue about?
Why do we use 0 instead of exit return success? Exit success.
I mean, I don't think it should matter, should it? Oh, it's because I don't have anything here. I'm stupid. So anyway, int number array, and then you can set just a couple different ways to go about setting your values in here. You can do, I believe you still close it with that. You have another way to define array, and everyone can see this, right? I just want to make sure I can see if I can zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit. Just make sure everyone can see this. You all can see this, right?
Yeah,
we can.
Okay. So you got another way to define an array, which is array 2, which can be where you set a size, and then you have another way to do it, which is you set a size and you fill it with some values. So array 3, we can say 5, and we can fill those 5 values with stuff in the array. Okay. So here is 3 ways to define an array. Okay.
If you don't initialize a number in an array, it reverts to 0, right? So like for the third one.
So it should, for this one, I mean, if you're referring to this one, these all 5 slots should be 0. And I call them
for like the third one. If we did 1, 2, 3, and then left the remaining 2 empty, it would have those as 0.
So if you did like that, that would still have the remaining 2 left as 0. Yes. I believe an int is a type that cannot be nullable or is not nulled, which basically that means is it cannot be undefined. It will just revert to 0. Don't worry about that. Just know that.
Can we write like expression on the array? Like, can we do like x plus 3 inside the?
Yeah, we're getting to that next. So describe the behavior C code that includes array access expressions. So what an array access expression looks like is it's like you have your number array that we have earlier, and you basically give like a slot, you access a slot in there. You can set that to like 5 or something. So what all this is doing is think of it like you have boxes, or like a stack maybe, or you have like, I don't know, a cabinet, a bookshelf, and you're accessing different books in that bookshelf. So the only weird thing though is that you start at 0 rather than 1. So this array that we've defined as 5 right here, or having 5 slots, only you would access them with 0 through 4 rather than 1 through 5. You just start at 0. So you can access the book that way. You can set the book at position 0 to 5. And there's a bunch of other ways you can do that, but this is going to be the main one. You can set a variable in here, so you could have like, I don't know if I made an int or like an array or something. You know, you just put a value in there, an integer, and that will access that.
Or an expression, right?
Well, an expression. Yes. I wonder, yeah, you could technically do an expression in there. I don't think you'd see that, but.
Yeah, I think as long as it would.
But with that second array they initialized, on some of his notes he says that if you don't unless you do the first number to equal 0 to initialize an array of zeros, he says it's undefined in some of his notes.
That would probably make sense. So is what he's saying is this?
Yeah, so that would give you an array of 5 zeros.
Okay, actually, let's find out.
I'm not sure.
Because some of his notes say that it's undefined if you don't give it an initial value.
Find out. I'm down to find out. So printf, we just have to Control D, and we will find out. Okay, that's what we're going to do here. So we want to take in the int. So let's do number array 2. And let's just do 1 because we don't particularly care. And this should print out, it should at least print out, assuming that this is not, yeah, so it's printing out that.
So it's undefined then?
I would assume that means undefined, yes. So then if you don't initialize the value, now if we were to set, for example, if we were to set the number 1 to 1, and then we run this, it should print out the 1, yes. So what I guess they're saying there is, instead of having when you don't initialize it, it fills it with basically a number that's not the right number.
Whatever was there previously.
Actually, I don't think so. I think it's filling it with, that's probably the negative, it's probably infinity or something like that, something that it can't do stuff with. So I'd assume that's some bit limit. Anyway, basically, if you don't set a number to it, it's going to have problems. It's undefined and you're going to have issues. So you should at least initialize it with a value. Okay.
So on array 3, if you did like position 4 or whatever,
yes,
would that also print out?
It would as well. So we can try that out real quick.
I think it would return a 0.
I think it would return a null, but let's find out. So that's 4. Slot, actually, that should be slot 3. So let's try it out. I'm curious to what it's. I would think it should return the negative infinity sign.
His notes say the rest filled with zeros.
So it looks like it turns a 0. So I guess what we've kind of figured out here is that this one, this fills each slot with null, whereas this slot, this fills all remaining, yeah, that's right, remaining slots with 0. Okay.
I would say the center one would be just undeclared or undefined, because
I guess there are still slots.
That was
Each of
different.
the slots are not defined. Each of the values are not defined. Yes.
So null is just the same thing as undefined.
Yes, / undefined.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would.
So it's not a random number, right?
It's not a random number. It looks like, from what I can tell, it looks like it's just like, I don't know. It looks like it's the same number, and I would assume it's probably some limit, like integer limit, that's basically impossible for it to compute. If I were to guess, probably the 16-bit integer limit, or maybe the 32. I would assume something that the computer looks at and can't do anything with.
Is there a quick way to fill an array with numbers that are incrementing by an a given?
Yeah. So if you wanted to
value.
do that,
A loop.
You could do a loop. I'm assuming you could do like a for loop, for example. So I don't know. Let's see. I don't know how many numbers you want to increment. We can do int I equals 0. I is.
But like nothing when you're initializing the array.
No, nothing
like
you can initialize. You'd have to write a separate program. There's no way to like a separate statement, I guess. Nothing to automatically increment. I mean, you could fill it in with ones through make like a really long one here, but I don't think they would be manual still.
Right. So like in MATLAB, where you could do like.
Yeah, I don't. Not like that. No.
Can't do that. Okay.
Okay. What about the last? Sorry.
Go ahead.
What about the last one, the number array 4 = 5? What does it do actually?
So the best way I'm going to try to draw this out in actually, yeah, I'm just going to draw this out. So basically, we've already defined that you have some boxes, and this is not actually. I'm going to put this like don't mind the double slashes. That's just a comment. So you have some boxes here, and each of these boxes are filled with something. We have 5 boxes, right? This is 4. Let me make one more. So these boxes have numbers in them. You can have like a 1, you can have like a 2, you can have like, basically you can put anything in these boxes, right? This is what an array is, right?
Okay.
But each of these boxes also have like an accessing value. So this is box 0, this is box 1, this is box 2, this is box 3, and this is box 4. This is the actual location in, I guess, the array. And I can fix this. So you understand that there's a location and then there's the actual value. What I am doing here is I'm going to this 4th location and I am setting this number to 5. That is what this statement does.
Oh, okay. And like the top ones, like it says the first one to 1, like, yes. And let's say for number 3, yeah, 1 and then 2, 1 and 3 for the first 3.
So that would take this and set this to 1, this to 2, this to 3, and the rest to 0. If you were to just execute this statement.
Yeah, I got you. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
We might want to clarify that statement you've got highlighted is a like declaration of the array, and then the one with the 4 is just modifying. Yeah.
And this is declarations. Define / declare an array.
So I'm confused on when you would actually use this in a code, because like I feel like I know he'll ask like use an array for this, but like
when would you use an array?
Yeah, like in what situation would you use an array?
So sometimes I mean I can think of a practical real life example. I don't know how he's going to specifically ask it, but like for example, when you're dealing with like lots of data, for example, like you have, I don't know, like think of it like you have bank entries. You have a bunch of entries in like a bank. You have a bunch of different balances. You don't want to have to manually declare a bunch of different balances through a separate int. You want to be able to store them in like a stack almost that you could easily shift through. So basically the way that you'll know that you'll need to declare an array is likely when you are declaring a lot of variables that are very similar. Like, I don't know, for example, like int1, int2, int3, int4, int5. By the time you get to that point, it will probably be very likely that you should be using an array if those values are very similar, like the integers that you're defining are very similar.
Gotcha. So it's just a faster way of doing things.
It is a much faster way to do it, and is a lot easier way to access things.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Let's move on to this. So, describe behavior. Okay, we write a C function or a sequence of statements that perform the desired operation of an array of variables. No pointers. You're expected to only use index notation, no pointers. I don't know what index notation is. Hold on, let me look this up. Does anyone know what index notation is?
Index notation is whenever we're doing like the array of I, or or the array of I plus 1. It's indexing through the array.
Okay, I can index through the array. Okay, that's good. So I will make a function real quick that does that. So going down here, there's another thing, and I'm assuming we're going to need to know this as well, is this is going to be a void index, and you're going to pass in the amount to index. So basically what we're just defining here is a little statement. I don't think we have to return anything. So what I've just created is a little function. This is, I don't know how he's going to ask this on the test, but you should be expected to know, we'll get to this later, but I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Just know that...
Can you explain between define a function or call a function?
So
this function doesn't return anything, right?
This function doesn't return anything. So I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. So basically, when you write a bunch of code, you want to have, think of it like little boxes that you code to do stuff, rather than making like this big box that you have to worry about how the entire box performs. You can make little boxes that you can proof to make sure that those boxes are doing what you want. So for example, if you wanted to code something, I don't know, the best way I can think of it is my experience is when you want to, I don't know, that's not really a good example though. Let me think. If you wanted to do a bunch of math, like for example, you had an operation that you wanted to do, I don't know, maybe like find the Pythagorean theorem of like a triangle, and you wanted to repeatedly do that a lot, you could basically just put that into a function and then pass in the values, and it would spit back the answer. It's basically like, you can use it in a lot of different ways, but it's a way to make things easier for you, I guess. I don't know if that's a great way to explain it.
It's just specializing tasks.
It makes it a lot easier to repeat tasks, I guess. I don't know who has their microphone on if they have a question or something. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to increment or index through an array. So I'm going to define an integer array, and I'm going to set this have 100 slots, and I'm going to set them all equal to 0. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the value of each of these. So for example, int I equals 0, I is less than 100, I plus. And then what I'm going to do through here is I'm just going to printf, and actually I'm going to This is basically a simple, and we can ask questions in a sec. I understand this is confusing for some people. But basically what this is going to do is this is going to increment through all of the slots in this 100 long like bookshelf almost, and it's going to pull the value. It's like almost going to read the titles of all the books in all 100 of those slots, and it's going to print those out. So when I run this, it's going to run out a bunch of zeros. It's going to print out a whole lot of zeros. That's not what I expected to happen. That is not what I expected to happen. All right, I didn't call this. That would explain it. So anyway, so this is a function, and this does what it's supposed to, but you also need to call it in your main function. Okay, that makes no sense for probably you guys too. Hold up. Let me just call it real quick, and then that will explain it. Index. Okay.
I think you need to.
You're gonna have to declare it first.
Yeah, before the main function.
Above the main int.
Okay, I have to declare the function up here.
Above the main function.
You can declare it above it. You don't have to write it above it.
Yeah, you can define it below if you want. He just said you have to declare it above the main function.
Okay, that's something I was not familiar with. Okay, that makes sense. So what you're saying is just have and how would you go about declaring it above the function if you just basically put this?
Yeah.
So.
And
with a semicolon.
So that's what you would do, and then you define it later on down there. So just for record.
I don't think you even need the amount. I think you can just have int too. Not that it really matters.
Okay, I'm gonna try to move this. Just make sure that and then like that. Yeah, okay, yep, and then it says go to definition or the declaration. Okay, so that looks like how you define it above. Okay, so anyway, when I run this program now, and that's way too much work for, okay, there you go. So I set it to increment through 50 slots in the array, and that's what our little function here did, is it just went through 50 of these slots and printed out the values. So what it means when it says increment or be able to index through an array is basically being able to go through each of the slots. Now this right here is pretty much the standard kind of way to do that. Basically this is the value of each of those positions in the bookshelf almost. It's almost like you're sliding down the bookshelf and you're picking up every book and reading the title off of it and printing it out. So you're just going down like 100 on a bookshelves and taking the book out of each bookshelf, reading it, and printing it out. That's kind of what this does. So I'm going to say questions now. You guys are welcome to ask because there's a lot here. This is a lot of difficult concepts. So ask away. Does anyone not understand what this is doing? What's up?
The thing that you did on top where it was like void index the int amount, like that part I don't understand.
From what I understand, and I remember someone mentioned this as well. I think he said this in the lecture as well. For some reason, C is just specific that they like to have all the declarations above. So if you want to define or you want to put the code for your method, it's got to be either, it can be down here, but you have to tell it that there's a function to look for, or you can just basically copy this thing and use this to replace this. If you define the code that's in your function above the main, that's fine. Otherwise, you need to kind of tell it to look, because it won't after the main.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit.
I think this is how he prefers it, though, like it declared first and then defined after.
I mean, I would assume that's how it's probably, he would probably prefer it as well. So,
right.
I mean, you can define it. So, and there's also a difference between declare and define. So this is a declaration. and then this is the definition, which basically the definition will have the code in it, whereas a declaration will just have the variables and types. So real quick, variables and types.
Well, usually what I like to do is if I was doing a program, for example, like a regular program, I would define and declare all of my functions in a separate file and just leave the main file all by itself.
But
just to make it look cleaner, I guess.
Yes. But for this, I'm
of course, that's not what he wants because you know it's overcomplicating things. But
I'm trying.
We'll eventually get to that.
I'm trying to cater to everyone. And for the most part, that's not. I mean, yes, that is exactly what you should do in like a more professional environment when you're making like code for in a company. You're trying to make code a little bit more serious, but this is just what we're talking about in the context of this class. So for the moment, define everything in one sheet and in one file, and you can add on to that later.
I want to say you don't actually need the variable names inside the declaration. You just need the types.
Okay, let's try that.
Yeah, you just need int or double or whatever.
Okay, that's okay. So yeah, so it looks like you'll only be expected to use index notation, no pointers. So it looks like that is pretty much index notation, no pointers. So that's pretty. If you have this, then you understand everything about this, then you'll be fine at least on that part.
I have a quick question.
So I have a quick. Oh, go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry about that. When you initialize the amount, I know you can remove it at the top. Like I just said, do you still have to have it at the? You have void index. You have the call at the top, but at the bottom, do you still have to have the amount after the initialize?
I wonder if. So I guess what you're saying is the amount here. This is what you're saying.
Yeah. Do you need that?
Well, this is you're defining the so basically what this is saying is, hey, look for this kind of function. This is you want to find an index with an int input. And then what this is saying is, here's a function, it doesn't return anything, it's called index, and it's an integer, and this is the name of the variable to put whatever the input in, the name of the variable that input should go into. So what you're saying is, the reason why this has to be here is because you're naming the input for you to access. So the amount here, which I didn't really use, which I apologize that I didn't, but basically what this should be is this should be less than amount, and in that way what I'm using is that input. Now you can put different variables in. So if I were to call this variable, I can put 50, and that 50 then goes into the amount value here, and then that's what I access here. Does that kind of make sense?
So that would be if I were less than 50?
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Someone else had another question. Feel free to ask.
Yeah, quick question. So, I was expecting it to like count it from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know why. Like, I didn't expect it to make it like a lot of zeros. You know what I mean?
So the reason why
What did
that
you make that?
So the reason why that is if I were to change this line, I'm going to copy this line real quick. So the difference is, instead of just printing the i's, which it would if I did it this way. For example, if we just put the I here, then it would print a bunch of i's, and it would print them in the right order, and then count from 0 up to 50. I think I have on here. Yes, which it doesn't put spaces in, but you know what? It's all good. I'll put a space in so you can see it. Windows 49. Yeah, it carried it over. So, there's a bug on here, but basically it counts up from 0 to 49. See, that's kind of what you were expecting, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why it doesn't do that for this code up here is because instead of accessing this I here, you're basically using that I to go to a certain spot in your bookshelf. So for example, instead of in that first iteration of the loop, you'd see that the I is equal to 0. So this is a 0 in here. And instead of printing the 0, it would instead go to the 0 spot in the bookshelf and then pull that value and then print that value, which is a 0.
Oh, so you mean like it keeps going to like the main value, which is 0, and then go back down and go back up again? You know what? That what you mean?
It's basically using it as like an index for the bookshelf rather than just printing out the I.
Oh, okay.
That extra 0 tacked onto the end is from the number array 3, value 3, from the main code.
Array value 3. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where we're printing, the third value.
Yeah, and usually when you're indexing arrays for the for loop in there, you have to do the, from where you have 50 elements, you usually would do amount -1.
Well, yeah, you can.
That usually gets rid of the bug.
Amount
It's not a bug.
Well, it is a bug because
it is a bug. It is a bug, but that is true. There you go. So then that would print out. Well, that's printing out. Hold on, let me fix this so it's actually what we were looking at earlier. But I mean, this is all part of debugging, and there are some people that and that's still.
Oh well, all right. I guess not.
Still printing out.
It's the printf from the main code. It says printf %d number array 3. We're putting the fourth value.
So see, he knows what's up. See, it's all part of debugging, guys. All part of debugging.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna print with the 49. So I was.
There we go.
I was right. This function does exactly what it's supposed to. It's just the other.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so I guess any other questions? I'm trying not to cut anybody off and give everyone ample time to ask their stuff.
This is just a last minute clarification question. So the one where you said the integer array bracket I.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. If you change the line 35, instead of 0 in that bracket, it would put say something like 3.
Mm-hmm.
It would print a bunch of 3s instead of 0s.
I wonder.
No,
I think it would only print 3 in the first one, and then I think it would print 0s in the rest. That would be what I would assume. Yes, that is what it does.
Okay, so it just loops back to 0.
So basically what you're saying is you're defining anything that you define here is setting that value in the array, and then everything else is going to be set to 0. So like this
one. Right, yeah. I forgot the other 99 would be classified as 0.
Yep.
Okay.
Everyone understand that? Any other questions?
Well, we do show how we can put in a new value for each one of those zeros using the for loop.
Okay.
Like where the print is, yeah.
So if we wanted to initialize it with all zeros, so we go back to here, and we want to basically go through and do all zeros. So this array now will just print out all zeros like this. And we wanted to fill it with 1 through 50 or 1 through 49. What we could do is we could have what you would probably want to do is want to set integer array I equal to I, and you could make another loop to print it out, but it would probably be more efficient to do it this way. But basically what this is going to do is this is going to take whatever that iteration is, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put it into all those slots in the array, and then print it out. So that's how you would access each individual slot. You could set them all to 5. You could do a lot of stuff. So for example, this will print out 1 through whatever it is, 1 through 49, which without spaces, we can put space in here. So there you go. And that basically fills the array with those values instead of just printing out like random numbers. The array also has that. You could also set it all equal to 5. So for example, if you just want a bunch of 5s, and even though you're initializing it with a 0, you're going to get a bunch of 5s. 49 to be actually 50 to be exact.
But what I found out is you have to use a for loop in order to set like a large amount of numbers within the array.
Yes.
So like if you have like an array of 100, like in order to do it without typing out every single data value, you have to do a for loop.
So yes. So the thing to keep in mind is when you're dealing with a lot of repetitive variables of a certain type, like for example, a bunch of bank, balances, or a bunch of, dates, or a bunch of days of the month, etc. You want to access those all and do this stuff to that. You're going to need an array, and then you're going to need a loop to deal with that.
Yeah, where this is it could be useful is like storing inputs from like a source, where you can point to that specific slot in the array and put in the new value.
Any other questions?
Before we move on from functions, we might want to talk about like local versus global variables, and just make sure everyone understands that like you can't reference variables from like your main function inside of like a function you're declaring.
I don't think that is that on the sheet.
I don't think it's on the study guide, but since we're going to be writing a lot of code with functions, I think everyone probably needs to understand that, so we're not like trying to reference functions, from like if we're writing multiple variables, people aren't trying to reference variables, or writing multiple functions, people aren't trying to reference.
That's probably a good point to make.
I have a question about this code. So when you when you said integer array I equals 5, did that set every integer in that array as 5?
Yes, because it's going through the slot 0, setting it to 5, looping through.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So I don't know who said that earlier. Going back to the not previous question, but the statement someone else said. Basically showing the scopes, variable scopes is what they're called. Basically where you can access these integers. So, or access your different types. So for example, if I wanted to access this integer array, I wouldn't be able to do that in this main function, even though that in the main section, because if I wanted to access integer array, I couldn't in here because, well, it's not part of the code, is not visible in this section. I guess that's the best way to describe it. It's not visible within these brackets. So basically, yes, there is code in here that has, if we go down to that code, it has an integer array value, but I can't access anything that is outside of these brackets, at least for the time being, at least for the context of the class or the test that you have tomorrow. There is other stuff to learn, and you will learn other stuff, but this is just for the context of the test tomorrow. So basically, if you wanted to access like the number array that's right here, in this, you couldn't access number array at the moment. So just keep in mind that everything that you have to access, either you're inputting it through the values here, which is like what you're defining in your, if you want to pass something in and pass something out, that's either through the return when you're passing it out, or through the, I guess, I forget the name of this, the inputs. Yeah, through the inputs. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So let's go through, see what else we have on our study sheet here. So describe the behavior of C code that uses an array accessors or whatever to manipulate a string. So a string, I'm going to make another function here. I'm going to make another void. We're going to call this string print. And I'm going to take in a char string text. I think this is how you do this. And then it should return nothing. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I am accepting a string real quick, and what do I call this? String print. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another alternative way to print a string rather than the printf function. We're going to kind of make our own printf function is kind of what I'm thinking here. So what we're going to do is we're going to define in here, I'm typing this string print. So this is some text. And so what I'm doing in here, I don't know if this is, like me or not. I'm doing this right. Yeah, what am I doing wrong?
Make sure to declare your function at the top.
Yep, that's what I missed. I'm going to miss that tomorrow on the test. String print. I believe. Okay. So that's not, but that, okay, that works. So basically, as someone pointed out, define it up on the top, and then we're basically making our own printf function. So actually, I'm sure print is already defined, so I won't print that. But basically, you now have an array of a bunch of different letters. And if we were to increment through each of the, let's see, for int I equals 0, I is less than, actually, we don't have a length yet, so I don't know. We don't have a way to determine the length of a string yet. But I know
you can use a while loop until you find the null character at the end of your string.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. We can do it different way. So while let's do this. Let's do that. So int I index equals 0 while I is actually while I is greater than 0. I don't know how the best way to do this. Index. Actually, what are we looking for? While, yeah, we can increase. Okay, so while text index, what is the character for the null character? Value?
\0 or /. Yep.
And what this is going to do is basically print out, as long as I index ++ here, this is going to print out every single character, and this is going to basically be your printf function. So if I were to do this right, you should have, well, we're going to still use printf, but make your own function by using the original function you were trying to make. Press C, and then this should be text I. So what this is going to do is going to take in do I have to?
But now we can send it any array that has strings.
What am I doing wrong here? The system not like.
Yeah, it's also useful if you're given like an array of all capital letters, you can bring them all down to lowercase.
Not gonna like this. This is some text. So there you go. I don't know why this is giving me the red underline. Conflicting types. I don't know what's up here, why it's giving me this error.
Semicolon, the end, no?
Not down here.
No. I see it.
I don't know. I usually just ignore most of the stuff the C line tells
If it
me.
runs, it runs. Okay, that's the great way to think about it in programming. If it runs, it runs. What is this? Conflicting types for string print. I think it doesn't like the fact that I have it declared. I wonder. Okay. I think if I just declared it up here, it'd be fine. Which I know you're not supposed to do, but fuck it. I think it's not liking how I declared it up here. Yep. Okay. So you're not supposed to declare it up here, but I think for some reason defining the input, there's probably another way you need to define what you're passing in. Anyway, so this is gonna basically print a character, an array of characters. So this will print some text. This is some text. And I should probably get rid of the other function that is printing stuff here, not string, the index function that we created. So this will only print the text that we put in here, which I know this is like an extraneous way to do something, but it explains a lot of stuff, or it shows how to do a lot of stuff. So instead of just doing a printf, what we are doing is we're inputting some text into our function, and our function is incrementing through each of those values in the array, and then printing out just that character, which is then giving us the same text. So does anyone have any questions or stuff so I can explain what that is?
Yeah, quick question. So for the while function that you typed, can you explain it?
So what this statement is going to do is, this is going to, I guess the best way to do is I'll just go from the top. So when you pass in your text, this is what your text is passed into, passing in some text here. It's going to first create a value that is basically a counter. It's 0. So it's going to say while, and it's going to go to that first text here, and it's going to say while the text is not equal to the null character. Basically what this is saying is, while this is not the character that's technically here, go through and run this function, or do the rest of this code. So for example, when we first start, it's at 0, so this is a 0 here. It's going to go to the 0 spot, which is this t. It's going to say t is not equal to the null character here. It's going to say yes, so that's true, so run the rest of the code. And it's going to print that t character, and then it's going to add 1 to the index. So that way, when it comes back up here, this is now 1. And it's going to go to that 1 spot, and it's going to say it's a lowercase h. And that lowercase h is not a null character. So go through and print it. And then add 1 to the counter. And so that now this is the 2. And so this 2 right here is going to go to the 2 spot, and the 2 spot's an I. And that text is going to say, oh, well, I is not equal to the null character. And so it's going to run that code. And eventually it's going to get to some point where it's at like the t, which I think is like 12 or something. It's going to say, well, t is not the null character. So it's going to print it, and it's going to add 1. And then it's going to get to the point at the end of the array where it's going to say, oh, this is 13 now. 13 is actually equal to the null character. And since it's not, basically, since that is false, since it is equal and it's not equal to, it's not going to run this code, and it's going to exit out of the loop.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
So whenever you declared the function at the top, did you? There's an array that you initialize technically, right? A character.
This is the character
array. But there's a problem with initializing an array of an unknown size, right?
Yes. But really,
and at the very top, we don't know the size of it.
Really what I am doing here is, since I am basically, what is happening here in honesty is I am creating something. This is what it looks like. This is really what it looks like. I am setting it equal to, this is some text. So that
okay, so it is according to the computer, it is a known size.
It is a known size because you're not going to put in an array with unknown size, because you're always going to pass in a value. If I don't pass in a value, it's going to scream at me.
Will it save each character to a point in an array, or will it save like this and is and some?
It's going to save each character, because an array in C is technically just or an array.
A single digit or character, a number value.
A single number value. So this is like a number 1, 2, 3, and all you're really saying with the value here, or the type, is how it's displayed, honestly. Because you could technically go through and, you technically could go through and just put a bunch of, so for example, if you wanted to go through, I bet you could do this. you could put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think that would.
And it would print out the characters associated with those numbers.
Yes, it should print out. I don't think that's the right way to do it. It's gonna scream at me. Yeah. Hold up. Let me actually define this. Int array. I don't think you can pass it in because it's differing types, but yes, you could technically print out the number of types if you switch this to a digit. So you could print out the numbers in reverse. You'd have to define your, but this will basically print out the number values for each of them. Yep, so see, that's printing out the number values for each of the types.
Nice.
Everyone, any questions? Everyone understand? Okay. So basically, all the number 9 and the quiz coverage thing, basically being able to look at this and understand how, like, look at a function, for example, and understand like what's going on. So for example, you could look at this and say, well, we're sending in an array of text, and in that text we're incrementing through it. We're printing out each character in the form of a digit, and when that's done, we return back. That's really being able to do that. It's going to be somewhat the quiz is going. And so then write a function. Actually, let's put up what I just do. Being able to declare a function with certain types, and then being able to define a function, which is what we're doing here. And basically being able to write a function kind of like what we made there that has different text. So I'm going to open up the floor to ask questions kind of at the end of the sheet. And it looks like at the end of this, by the way, it says that you will not be asked to pass an array into a function, which is what I've done here. You'll only be asked to pass text, so don't worry about this. Don't worry about the fact that this is an array. Just think of this like a rip. You'll be expected to know just passing in like a character or an int, not an entire array, like I've done here. So here you can ask questions, or I think what would probably be beneficial for some people is just kind of working through some code. So for example, if you wanted to see like how to increment through an array, or you wanted to see something that you are a little confused about, or working through code, you know, maybe you didn't do something or you didn't understand something, we can create some code here too that kind of satisfies a given criteria as well. So if you want to go ahead, any questions, go ahead. I know I didn't do that good of a job explaining it, so someone better have some questions.
I think you did great.
Yeah, I also think you did great. Thank you.
Did great, yeah, thank you.
Hey, you did really good.
So we can go write some examples of some stuff if you guys want to see, like, I don't know, just describe some function and we can kind of work through it together. But I think this is really, like, kind of gone over everything I'd like to run over. We can go through the practice quiz real quick, and then I think that'd be it.
Yeah.
Side note, could you like also put the code in Discord so we can like reference it later?
Yeah, let me put this down here real quick. I mean, this is just random code. If you're gonna get ill about me writing some random code review session, then I mean.
Yeah, it's just because like the notes they also like help and whatnot.
I posted it in the ECE. I'm gonna pin this real quick.
Thank you.
And then you guys can hopefully access that later. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna go pull up the practice quiz. I think I pretty much, I'm trying to remember how much of it I did. I think there was only one that I just bothered not to do.
Hold on, with this code right here. So you did the string print. This is some text. So did that string get, in a way, passed as an array? as the text index right there in the wild.
So, what do you, I'm trying to figure out what you're asking. What you're saying is this is an array that we passed in here.
Yeah, is that what's going on?
Yes, we're passing in some text in the form of an array that we are then reassembling back into text.
Okay, so another way of thinking of strings is an array of characters?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
That is what he was, and the reason why I've done this example for you guys is because he said, and he made a big deal about this in the lectures, understanding that the character, the text is just a bunch of characters, and I think this is the best way to take it apart and reassemble it to show that. I mean, I don't know how much of this you'll be expected to know, but at least being familiar with how it works, I think is good enough for now. And I'm going to pull up the practice quiz. Practice quiz 2, review.
Was the one that you didn't do, the McLaren expansion series one?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I looked at that. I took a look at that. I was like, oh, hell no. Yeah.
I spent way too long on that one.
Dude, let me share my screen real quick and we'll
Wait, which one that required such a long declaration?
I'll show you, yeah.
I think it was 5.
I hope to God that one's not on the quiz.
Dude, if that's on the quiz, I'm just getting up and leaving, y'all. I'm done.
Oh, I totally forgot to do the practice quiz. Oops.
Well, good. I'm showing it for you guys. You're all good.
He did also say, like, I think he mentioned to me, like, I think I went to office hours, that like the quiz is not gonna be like that similar to the practice quiz. That's just like the practice quiz is just like practice. Yeah.
So like it's not really graded either way.
Yeah. So you're good.
Okay, foo.
All right, cool. I'm still gonna do it anyway.
Okay, so what I'm
go for it.
Is I'm going to go through and explain each of these questions. We can write it out. We can switch to C-line. We can explain it all. That's really, I'm open for all of that. I can do my best to kind of explain how I chose to write this. There's some of these that aren't right. We can kind of look through that and so we can point them out. So by the end of this, you should have a really rough idea of kind of what I'm thinking here. So do not use any other functions that from the standard, basically do not use any other functions. Any variable mentioned has already been declared and initialized for easier grading and indenture code properly. So given a non-zero positive integer variable n, write a for loop that calculates the n factorial and puts the answer in a variable named n fact. Well, I clearly didn't do that, so that's going to be great. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to C-line real quick, and I'm going to kind of work these problems out. It would probably be best to, let me see if I can switch windows again, back to C-line. I'm just going to create these programs in C-line, and then that way we can go through and kind of work them. If you need the practice quiz questions, someone can probably post them. I'm not particularly, that's not what I'm here for. I'm just going to kind of work them and create them here for you guys. Okay, so for the first part of C-line, that first question, it's basically saying, given I'm going to real quick undeclare pretty much everything.
I did post them in the chat,
so
by the
they're
way.
all posted, so if you guys need them, then you're good to go. I'm just going to real quick, I can probably do this in a much more efficient way. I think it's I can do this a little bit better. Oh well. So what we're doing is we're going to be, so as the question says, it says, given a non-zero positive integer variable n, so we're just going to create that int n equals like 5, for example. So that's what we're given. We're given this up here. Create a for loop that calculates the n factorial and puts the answer in a variable named n fact. So what I would do is I'd start off with creating another variable, and I think, n fact, that's what I create here. And I would set it equal to 0 at the moment. That may not be a smart idea whenever we get around to multiplying stuff by it.
One thing I was wondering about was he went off in class the other day about how on the test questions when it says write a for loop, only write a for loop, and ask for an expression, only write an expression. But it seems like this question you have to write at least one code to initialize.
Because if you write the n fact in the variable, it's going to get or in the loop, it's going to keep getting reinitialized.
Yeah.
And it's not going to maintain a persistent value.
Yeah, so like I'm guessing this is like an exception where we can write like one line outside the for loop.
Yes, because
well, I think it's already been initialized, so you don't. It's going to be initialized prior to the for loop.
Yeah, it's already been like initialized, but we don't know the value, and we need to initialize it with a certain value for it to work.
Yeah.
Right. I think on mine I said like something like if it was initialized to a value, but I mean, I see what you're
what
saying.
happens? It's how he grades it.
Yeah, I think if he was more specific, I really can't imagine him taking on much points for, or if any, for basically just initializing not what he told you have. Since you're given a positive variable n, but I think there is a clear difference between given a non-zero positive integer variable n, write a for loop that calculates an n factorial and put it in the variable named n fact. I think there's a clear difference. But anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write a simple little function here that is going to do just that. Or a little loop here that's going to do just that. So then we know that n fact n fact equals, actually we should probably initialize it as 1.
You know, on his answer on the practice quiz, he initializes stuff before the for loop.
Yeah, this is true. He does.
So,
Yeah, but the one thing he specifies not to initialize is like the in fact, I think. Like you have to do it whenever you're testing.
He initializes I and in
yeah,
fact.
he literally breaks all his rules, which is great.
Right.
He does that a lot.
Okay, so that is pretty much, I mean, the answers are here, but I guess explaining them is probably best here as well. So you guys see kind of what I've done here. This is very similar, only this is kind of this is pretty similar actually to what he's done. There is other ways to write this code, but basically what this is, and actually this should be a multiplication, not a plus. But basically what this is going to do is, at the end of this, I'm just going to write a printf real quick down here as well. And this is going to basically print out n fact. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to basically create the factorial 5 and print that out. So anybody have any questions on this one? And then I can kind of explain each little part if you guys have any.
Yeah, we'll just go through it.
Yeah, okay. So starting off, what I am doing here is I'm basically setting the factorial. So I want the factorial 5. Basically what the question asks is kind of basically calculates the n factorial of the integer n. So I'm basically just checking that. I'm putting in 5, 10, whatever the factorial is. I'm setting n fact to 1 because I changed this because if I had set it to 0, 0 times any value is going to be 0, and so this would maintain 0 the entire time, and it wouldn't calculate the thing at all. So for example, if I set this to 0, it's going to be 0, and it's going to be a fat 0.
If you print what in fact is after each iteration, with a plus, it'll show like sort of like what's going on.
We'll print in fact at each iteration. Okay. Actually, probably
we'll do it after the first one.
Yeah, let me do it. Let me do this. Actually, I'll put a space instead. That'll probably be better. So what this is going to do is it's going to take 1, and then, so basically this should be 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I should also print.
It's printing the one at, because you have the printf before the,
If I set it after, it would. So there you go. I'm just going to print it too many times. What? wonder if I have to set it. Okay, hold on. I gotta figure this out. Let's make sure that. What is 5 factorial? Make sure I'm making sure that I got the right number here. Yeah, 120. Okay, I don't know why it's printing it extra times, but no, actually it's because I'm printing it here and then here. Okay. Anyway, but this is just gonna basically the steps. So this is 1 or 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Does everyone understand that? That's like basically calculating out the factorial, and then I can get rid of this last line so it doesn't print it twice. So actually, I could probably do this a little bit different.
If you did I.
Yeah, I'm gonna do I in there as well, so it explains kind of a little bit more. Is that how you do it? Actually, no.
You don't need the yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry. So that's gonna basically just hold up. Nope, I need to put another space in here. Put 2 spaces. So this is what it's doing. It's doing 5 times 5, 20 times 4, 60 times 3, 120 times 2, and 120 times 1. And that's basically the factorial function. If you don't know what factorial is, probably should look it up there. Everyone understand that?
It's a little bit different. Just because you're changing in fact every time. Mm-hmm. So it's actually 5 times 5, 5 times 4, 5 times 3, 5 times 2. But yeah.
Well, yeah. This is basically 5 times 5 times 4. Yeah, I understand. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask. They're not stupid questions, I promise. We're going to kill this test tomorrow. Okay. Do I move on to the next question on the practice quiz? So the next question says, basically, given an integer variable choice, write C code that prints enter a decimal digit and then reads a decimal digit from the user and stores it into choice. If the value is less than 0 or greater than 9, print the message again and get a new value. Keep doing this as many times as necessary until one value in the choice is between 0 and 9. You can assume that the user will only enter decimal integer values. So what I've done here is basically I will real quick comment this out. I don't know what the commenting stuff is. There we go. I got it.
You only need 1 star, but yeah.
You know what? It's all good. Oh wait, do we need? Oh, look at that. I mean, you can do comments that way too. Okay. Okay. I wonder what the double comments then is, or double star, because it was all green. I wonder. Okay. Anyway, so
it's just text, I think.
Okay. So basically, what we want to do is out of question number 2, it's basically asking the user's going to. It's basically saying that the user is going to input a number, and we need to check to make sure that number is between 0 and 9. So we can do that by pretty much doing a while loop. So while we can set our text, actually let's define our text here. So input equals 0, because we're going to write over this. While input is less than, let's see, let me make sure I'm copying this back right. So between 0 and 9, so while the thing is less than 9 and input is greater than 0, make sure this is right, until the value is, so basically what I'm saying is, I'm going to put, actually, so hold on, I should rephrase this. So while input, so what it's asking is, it's asking for, to make sure that the value that you get from the input that the user types in is between 9 and 0. So what we would do is we would have it so that while input is greater than 9 or less than 9, we want to ask the question again. And now I also should probably set this to like -1 so that it doesn't input that. And then this is just going to print our text that says enter a value, enter a number. So enter a decimal digit, which I probably should set this as a double.
Do you think there should be a do while loop so that you can get the input in the first place?
I think
That's what I did. I did a do while.
But he has a while loop on his answer key, so I'm not gonna I wouldn't be.
I did
Guys, there's probably a million ways to do this. I wouldn't, long as the function works, you're probably good. As long as it works. The thing about coding is you can have some really cool input. I'm not trying to cut you off, guys. You guys are welcome to talk about how you solved it. I'm not
Yeah, I tried it with a while, but it kept giving me like errors saying that something couldn't be accessed or something like that. The only way I could think of fixing it was checking the condition afterwards.
I think well, input is greater than 9 or less than 0.
I think you have to use an or instead of and, because it can't be less than 0. Yeah.
Which I think now I have to set this back to -1. Okay, there we go. So enter our decimal digit. We're going to choose 100 because that's clearly not within the bounds we set. And now it's going to go to town. Take a look at this. This is what you call an infinite loop. So the question asked, though, is why is it an infinite loop? So
Because your scanf is in the loop rather than before it.
yes, but it still should ask for the.
Can you? Oh, sorry.
It still should go ahead and ask or input the scan loop again. I mean, it's still scanf. Yeah, he's got the thing in there as well.
We should use a return or no?
No, I'm trying to figure out why.
It's because your input, you're setting it to -1. You're setting the input.
Well, I'm not setting it to -1 all the time. I'm just setting it after this runs. It's only running this. So the question I ask is, then when I put it within the bounds, let's just say 5, it's also doing that. It's not.
Do you think you need a % sign in the scanf function? Like before the
that's
D?
probably what it is.
Actually. %D.
Yep, that's probably exactly what it is. I would be willing to bet, and then that's going to solve this whole entire issue. So 5, we're done. See, my man right there, you know what's up. Welcome to debugging 101.
Nice.
Actually, there's your problem though. We put it outside of the range and it's still having issues. Or input is less than. Yeah, I think it actually needs that and. Because otherwise, if you put 1,000, hold on. We gotta figure this out. So input is greater than 9 or, hold up. Or input is. Well, this is gonna always input. Hold on, what is? Decimal digit. I don't think it's the parentheses issue. I'm just gonna kind of copy in what he has for the answer key here. Also, guys, if you have any other questions, I'm just gonna kind of go through I'll stop in a second. I'll let you guys ask any questions so that if you guys want to head out early or something like that. So that is pretty much exactly what he has in the answer key. So
that makes sense.
Enter a decimal digit. It's going to be 5, and that should be good, and that should finish out. And then if it's 1,000, that is clearly greater than 9, it should ask again, but it's not. So I don't think the answer key there is right. What he's provided in the answer key is not right. Because what I'm reading this as is if the value is less than 0 or greater than 9, then print the message again and get a new value. But it's literally the code that here it is. I know why. It's because this needs to have the big not in front of it. Well, yeah, hold up. That's my code. Why the heck is this not? Hold up. So that is his code, and that does not do what it's supposed to. Because when it's outside of the range, 1,000 for example, it closes the program.
Do you think it's because of the bracket? Because I think where it says like int main and has like the open bracket, I don't think there's a closed bracket for that one.
There's a closed bracket down here.
Oh, okay.
I think you gotta change the 9 and the 0 to like put just a 0.0. That might be, I don't know.
If I were to do this, I would have flipped this around differently and say while it is not within, while input is, because we want it between less than 9 and greater than 0. While it is both of those, that's what we want.
Yeah, that should work.
So if we enter our digit and we say 1,000, it's still not doing that though. Why the heck? And I'm going to have it print output real quick. Because this is a good question then. If this is his answer key and this is not right, then that's, I don't know if it's not right or it's just C-line being a pain, but it's 100. It should print, so it's printing the 0, so it's not actually getting the input. Ah, that would explain it. So anyone know why it's not?
Is it because you initialize it as a float and you're inputting
Maybe
an int?
Let's try an int. That might be it. That could easily be it. There we go. So see that
Nice. Wow, that's crazy.
So guys, what's up?
What did you just change? What made it work?
So I had defined my input as a float rather than an integer. And since I was saying it's an integer here with the decimal, it wasn't actually reading it properly and it was constantly setting it to 0. So that's the kind of debugging that I don't mind showing you guys because I'm stupid as a doornail, but I mean that's kind of the stuff that you'll need to be able to do. And that's also why it's really frustrating for like why I think a lot of these tests that are just, plain text editor are not really fair because there's a whole aspect that they should test you on, which is being able to solve your own problems rather than just writing plain out text.
I have to agree with that.
Facts.
Then again, I'm not the professor. Okay, before we move on, which I don't mind working out the rest of them and showing you kind of the whole process of trying to figure out what's going on.
Can we do 4?
We can do. Was that the cosine one? Or the?
No.
Yeah, we can try that one together. We might need all of our collective brain power together on that one. We can definitely do that one. We can move on to that one next. Actually, before we do though, does anyone have any like other things they want to go over? Because I think this is going to be kind of the last thing tonight.
You know, I had a just kind of a dumb question about arrays. When you're debugging, is there any way of seeing what's inside the array without like just printing out, you know, a specific position to seeing what's going on there?
So for Visual Studio, you have, I don't know if you set a break. I wonder if they can let you do this. So in Visual Studio, which is another editor, which is another IDE, it lets you, when you hit a breakpoint, sometimes it lets you, let me put this string print. Sometimes it actually, I would assume maybe this is similar, but sometimes it actually lets you drop down and see each of the values in the array if it's not too much. So I'm going to say string print, and I'm just going to say this is some text, and I'm going to find out. So when we go through here, this will stop the breakpoint here. It didn't. Great. Let's try this again. Is it just me or is this breakpoint not hitting?
You have to do debug mode, don't you?
Oh, I do. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this editor. Okay, so we have text. Here we are. It does let you do it. So what it does is basically what I'm looking at down here is this is the text variable, and this is the, see, it looks like it's defined as an array, and it looks like it's telling you each, at least the first one of text is character T. So yeah, it looks like it's doing text input. I wonder if I hit here. Let me stop this real quick. Debug, and it's going to hit the text, and then it's going to say, okay.
If you go to the print function, you can actually cycle through the print and find like each individual one.
So if I go to the print function, I can what now?
On the left-hand side, there's a green arrow with a bar underneath it. You can increment it underneath the wrench. Yeah, you can increment like the while loop, and it'll go to the next one, the next egg. Yeah. It's not show. It's still showing T.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because Visual Studio lets you drop down and see the entire array, which when you get into objects.
Is there a memory view? There's a view you can do memory view, maybe.
Memory?
Right above the text. It's like variable LD, yeah. Maybe that's in there.
No, it's literally not pulling up anything. New watch? I wonder if you set a watch to it. E. No. Yeah, I don't think that's. Okay, so anyway, I think that's about as much as I don't think so. I'm aware of on this idea.
You know, another quick question that on
I
your
might be able to answer
app where,
this one.
Was that?
Sorry.
I might be able to help you out with that other one. I think there. So if you're in debug mode and you go to, let's see, I don't know, the debugger, the console window, not just the terminal, but there's a variables tab in there, and I think you can add variables to that. Let me rerun it so I can give better instructions there. But
like type text and then
all right, yeah. So at the top, there's the console tab and debugger, and I think that you can enter in, you can add variables to watch.
Looks like I've got a watch on it. Okay, you know what? It's all good. Does anyone have any non-IDE questions? Okay. Does anybody have any other questions before we tackle the cosine sine, the Maclaurin series from Calc 2 that I absolutely despised? Does anybody have any non-class related questions? Does anybody need any emotional support for this week of hell, of many tests? Okay, then I think we'll get started. Okay. So let's get rid of this, and let's make ourselves a little function here that is going to be our Maclaurin series. Now I scroll this down here, and hold on, we have a new program. So this basically says that recall that k exclamation point is n factorial, which is blah blah blah. Do not call any other function or definition. Holy crap, this is gonna be fun. Okay, y'all are gonna have to help me on this because my two brain cells are already late tonight are already kind of dead after tonight. So write the definition of the cosine function using the Maclaurin series explanation. So you start off with the one. So basically what you're doing is you're doing 1 plus minus plus minus plus minus, and then you're doing, yeah, x to 2. Holy crap, this is going to be fun.
I spent too much time on it.
Yeah, now you guys are going to challenge me. I got to actually figure out how to do this. Okay. Did you ever get an answer though?
No, I give up.
Okay, well then we're going to do it tonight. The answer you guys might not like, and my way of doing it is probably not the most efficient, but we'll find out. So I'm going to create an int I, and we're going to call an int I, I'm going to set this to 1, and this is going to be our integer, well, I don't know. Basically the number that increments. Now, if you look at the question, I know that's not how you spell it either, but if you look at the question, the one thing I noticed is that like it starts with 1 over 1, and then it has like x to the 2, you know, all that stuff. So I think, and actually I'm going to make another integer as well, int final answer, and I'm going to set that to 1 as well. So that way we have, this is where we are going to store our final answer. Okay. So one thing I noticed about this, the way that this question asks, is there's a pattern. I think there's an easy way to probably go about doing this, or an easier way to do this is just to look for the pattern. So I'm also going to make another integer for the sign. And I'm just going to start by making, I'm just going to make a sign integer, and this will store our sign. Now, by the way, if you're studying for the test, this is probably not going to be too much of a use to like stick around. You can kind of watch how I write a program, but this is not going to be super beneficial to know how to do and understand everything. If you have other things you don't understand, this is probably one of the last things you probably should focus on, if that makes any sense.
I tried to approach this by either doing the numerator or the denominator first.
I'm trying to think. Let's do a for loop. I don't know. Would it be a while loop? While. I need to figure Most recent term added. Okay, last term. Int. Actually, I should probably start making these double. These should all be doubles. Never mind. Last term equals 1. Sign equals 0. Int double final answer. Okay. So while last term is greater than, what do we set this? What is this greater than? Well, the last term is greater than 10 to the negative 5, 10e negative 5. Do this. So then we want to have final answer. Actually, we could probably have two if statements. So if last term, so sign equals 0, sign equals 1, else if sign equals 1, and this is just sign equals 0, and all that I've done here is just make something that alternates the sign back and forth. So every time this runs, it's just, the sign will be either 1 or 0.
Okay.
Let's see. We cannot call pal, the pal function. So. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call two functions up here. To int top. Actually, let's do int. Let's just do these doubles to make this easier. Top equals 1. Double bottom equals 1. Because this will constantly change each time the loop iterates. So start it. Let's do this. Let's do final answer minus equals top over bottom. And this will be final answer plus equals top over bottom. And so this is basically just going to add in minus terms in opposite order. Everyone understand?
Yeah.
And then I need to define the code to do the top and the bottom. So let's see. So top is just, it looks like it's increasing by 2. 1. So it looks like cosine increases by 2. So int I should probably be, this probably needs to be 0. And then I plus equals 2. And that way each time top. And then we still need an input. So double num to cosine equals, we'll just set this equal to cosine of 5. It's cosine of 60. We'll do that. That's an easier one to figure out. Okay. Yeah, this guy's really complex. Jeez.
Yeah, especially since we can't use the power function.
I'm going to figure this out. Equals 1, I plus equals. Okay, let's do the top. So actually the bottom. So we had the factorial earlier. Factorial function, right? Do we have a factorial function that we already made? Nfac.
Yeah, in fact.
Okay, well, we're going to make a function.
I think we only need to copy like the internals of the while loop since we already have a while loop, and it'll increment each time we go through it.
I was going to try doing making use of a function.
Okay.
Just gonna, let's see. Let's see. Int factorial of int input. And I'm going to define it up here because fuck it. Nfac. Yeah, if I remember correctly, Nfac should just be oh, never mind. We don't want that. Input and then equals on. Yes, and this should be just be n. There we go. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to call the factorial of I, which increments, and we're going to set that to the top.
To the bottom?
No, it might be the bottom. You might be right. I just got to check the formula. Yeah, you're right. Bottom. Okay. So now all we have to worry about is the top. So see what I've done is I've called that function that we've defined up there. I don't know how many people are left in here. We've got 7. Oh, okay. Most people left. Okay. And then we've got the top, which is just the power function. So I wonder if you could just run a for loop for int I equals.
All we have to do is calculate the x to the 2k, right? Since we already have the sign.
Yep. Yep. How would you recommend doing that?
I try to do it by just doing setting a variable and doing like I did m and then m times m.
Yeah, but that doesn't work.
Times.
Int I equals. Int I equals. I've already defined int x equals I greater than 0, and I minus minus, and then it should be, I'm going to call this exponent. Actually, no, this should just be the input. So num to cosine times num to cosine. That should, hold up, no. I should probably do top equals num to cosine, and then that way this is top times top. I think that should do it.
Do you guys do you remember? Do we need to log into Zoom tomorrow? Or we just log into Moodle, take the test, and turn it in.
I have no idea. That's probably a good question.
I can't remember what we did last time.
I think last time there was no Zoom call because I remember I was having like glitches with lockdown, and I had to like call his office phone to ask him about it.
All right, he did say something like he wouldn't even be on Zoom to like ask questions, like get a.
So let's see if this works. What is the double? What is the double float? Is it float, I think? For doubles?
LF.
Yeah, LF.
Okay. And then let's see if it works. I doubt this will work. It's probably an infinite loop. Absolutely nothing. Actually, it's stuck in an infinite loop at the moment. Actually, yeah. We didn't set a breakpoint, actually. Oh, we did.
The while, yeah.
We didn't ever set in the last term, though. Here we go.
Okay.
Last term equals top.
It would be the absolute value of that, right?
Well, we are not, this is just top and bottom, it's not the negative.
Oh, okay.
It's still running. Great. I should try to print out. Just do something stupid. Yeah, I'm about to just give up and go to, chill out and do some other things, but this is not one. I and F, that's a problem.
Oh, so it's stuck in the
Infinite.
That's like that value that we were getting earlier, like the negative 8,500,000 or whatever. It's like the null value, right?
I think that means you're dividing by 0 somewhere.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think I got that value
double?
in the.
Let's make sure the bottom is 1.
I did this practice quiz yesterday, and we coded it a little differently. But I got mine where it actually like would work for like 0, 1, and 2. I tested it on, and it like calculated the right cosine for all of those. But if I did 3 or anything bigger, it would get like stuck in an infinite loop. It would be like calculating negative infinity and stuff. So I do not know what's going on with this like question.
What's the size maximum for like a double? Do we have to use floats or anything?
And I equals 0. I is 1 up here. I guess. Oh, I bet, did I define, Yeah, dude, I don't know. I'm going to bed. Y'all have fun. I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks for
That's
your
exactly
comment.
how I
This is
felt.
not
I appreciate it.
This is not productive at all. We don't need to fucking know this. Y'all have a good night. I'm not.
I really appreciate it, though.